Yo, what's up, guys? It's Derp here with another Dark and Darker video. Oh, let me turn on my light. Boom. Now you can see me better. Hopefully my mic sounds better this time. This one I'm kind of coming off the cuff. I want to say thank you to all my supporters, all my patrons, all my YouTube subscribers. Thank you guys. Love you guys. You guys are the best. This is a Dark and Darker video, and it is about a very specific topic. And it is about what is happening with the metas of the game and how the game is kind of turning into an FPS with this new range meta. You know, I'm seeing a lot more three-man ranger teams. I'm seeing a lot more people that just have, 5 or more stacks of throwables, especially barbarians and fighters, or barbarians, rogues, and fighters. Everybody who can have a crossbow is wearing a crossbow, including wizards. It's just getting out of hand, and the range meta is caused by two very specific things. All right. The first thing is the slow from all ranged. The slow to your movement speed is incredible. So every time you get hit, or every time you hit somebody else with a ranged weapon, whether it be a bow, a longbow, a crossbow, a throwable, whatever it is, a hand axe, a throwing dagger, anything, it's going to slow them from anywhere from, I think, like 10 to 25%, which is huge. And that's just super excessive. I'm not going to tell Iron Mace how to fix this problem. In my opinion, I think it should just disappear. I think they should just get rid of that mechanic of slowing on hit from ranged weapons. All of them, throwing weapons, everything. Almost every class has either the base movement speed or a skill or ability that increases their movement speed in order to catch up to somebody else. And the fact that you have ranged weapons automatically gives you don't really need as big of a gap closer. The only people who really need that slow are barbarians and high PDR fighters, right? But fighters have sprint. Also, just hit your shots. Whereas, like, why isn't it? It's a hardcore PvP game. Why are they? It's a skill issue, right? Like, hit your shots and people will die. You don't need the slow to make it easier for people to hit your shots. If anything, ranged weapons should be more difficult to play in this game, in a melee focused game, right? So that slow is hugely broken, and there's just too much damage on all of the throwables and the things like crossbow and longbow. There's just flat out too much damage for a melee focused game. So I'm going to go over some clips that I saw, and this isn't just my opinion. Like, I'm going to give receipts. Like, this is happening more often than we think, especially at a higher level. Once you have enough money and you have like 2 or 3 kits set, what else are you going to spend your money on other than consumables, right? So it's just kind of a natural part of the game to, okay, well, my stash is full. I have enough money. Why don't I just make my life easier and run 5 to 10 stacks of throwing daggers or throwing axes, or always have a crossbow every match, right? So let's just jump right into it. So first things first, I'm going to get into a video specifically about thrown utility damage. And this is by Ryan 6 Days a Week. Huge shout out to Ryan 6 Days a Week. Puts in a lot of good work, does a lot of good testing. So rather than recreating this myself, I'm just going to use his. He has everything listed. He did a really good job on this video. And it's only 4 minutes long. So I'm just going to kind of jump right into this.
Yo, what's going on, gamers? It's Ryan 6 Days a Week. And in this video, we're going to be going over thrown utility and what exactly can affect their damage, since I often find people don't really loot or use these items as often as they should, when they give such a massive advantage in fights. Let's start with the explosive bottles and oil lanterns, also commonly referenced as mollies.
So the Molotov cocktails and the thrown lanterns, we don't see as much, but there are people, especially wizards, and warlocks and clerics that run a lot of these, and there's a specific reason for that that he goes over in the video. So I'm going to kind of skip some of it.
These throwable utility items will deal no impact damage and instead spawn a ground AoE that deals 3 magic damage per second, no matter the rarity. It's the same across the board.
So base damage is the same across the
bottles
board.
And oil lanterns are magic damage. Their damage will increase with magic power, plus additional magic damage, and plus true magic damage.
But like you just said, so the base damage is 3 damage. That doesn't increase. But it scales with, so half of your magic power bonus plus half of your true magic damage bonus. So, and your any other scaling from any kind of other magic damage sources. So that includes will, magic damage, true magic damage, basically anything else that adds damage to magic. So every tick, so say you have plus 10 magic damage, your Molotovs are now doing 13 damage a tick, as long as they're standing in it. And the ticks don't stack properly, so sometimes 1 second will give 3 ticks or 3 stacks of burn, and then sometimes 1 second won't give any. It's really kind of hit or miss. So I think it depends on where they're standing. I haven't done as much testing as I would like, but from what I can see, it depends on where their hitbox is when they enter the fire or the fire hits them. So it actually works better if they run through it. From what I have tested, hitting them directly is actually kind of bad because it doesn't register that hit effect immediately. So you want it to either drop at their feet or hit them as they're in stride and they run right through it. So they're almost better used to block off corridors because they're going to get more tick damage if they run through it, from what I've seen. But that's hugely broken. So any plus magic damage, plus true magic damage, or will is going to stack with a 0.5 to all magic damage, and that's going to cut through PDR. It's only affected by magic resist, right? So it's going to be super good against fighters. It's going to be super good against clerics. It's not going to be as good against wizards or warlocks, but it's going to be super good against rogues. Anybody who has lower knowledge or will, or just PDR in general. So that's a huge issue, and you could find these all over the place, and they're fairly cheap from other players. So now let's skip ahead to physical thrown utility weapons, because there's a huge issue there.
Now, let's move on to the Francisca axes and throwing knives, which do a single instance of on-hit physical damage. The rule here mostly just follows basic weapon damage. So, plus additional damage, plus true damage, and any form of physical power will increase the damage from these two utility items at 100% scaling. This is where perk and spell bonuses make things a little crazy.
So if you pause it and go back a second, what he's saying is every single damage source that you can do for physical damage, additional physical damage, true physical damage, physical power bonus, strength, all of that, all applies at a 100% bonus. So if you have a throwing axe and you have plus 10 additional physical damage or true physical damage or whatever, it's going to do a flat bonus 10 bonus damage, right? So you're going to turn a 18 damage throwing weapon into a 28 damage weapon before your other strength modifiers. So it stacks up really, 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 really quickly. And they do they can do a ton of damage. So he does an experiment where he throws them at dummies.
This is where perks like Barbarian's Axe Mastery and Executioner for Franciscas, they will also benefit from any kind of applied damage buffs, like the Cleric's Divine Strike and the Wizard's Ignite. At full buff, this can cause some absurdly high damage numbers, even with absolutely no gear. Here, you can see me hit in the high 60s with the starter kit Francisca axes, which deal only 18 damage at base. Note, that's over 3 times the base damage.
So check that out.
Base. Note,
67 to 68 damage from a headshot with a gray starter kit Francesca on a Barbarian. Now he is buffed. He has Divine Smite, he has Bless, and he uses his 2 abilities. But that's incredible. I mean, if you're hitting another starter kit, they're almost dead from one throwing axe. Now, if you imagine if they had like 5 stacks of green throwing axes, you could literally clear lobbies with just throwing axes. So it basically turns Barbarian into a ranged character, especially if you add if you add the fact that all of the ranged weapons are stacking with on hit attacks, right? So Achilles Strike, for Barbarians it would be Achilles Strike and whatever that one is that gives your life back. So they could regen life off of their Achilles Strike from a throwing axe, so they don't even have to get in within range. Weak point, all the rogue, the poison, ambush, all that stuff from rogue applies to their throwing daggers. Victory Strike from fighters applies to throwing daggers and throwing axes. So all of these damage bonuses and on hit effects apply to throwing weapons as well. So that's hugely broken. But now that we know kind of the damage, and he goes into like you could charge up the shots and stuff too, I would highly recommend just watching this video in full. I just kind of wanted to show you the basic premises, because there's another video that I found on Reddit that highlights this issue as well. We're seeing that everything is turning into a range meta, whether it's Wizard, Warlock, Fighter, even Barbarian and Rogue are now ranged characters. Bard is basically a ranged character. All of the classes are basically now just ranged characters because of the prevalence of throwables and crossbows. So I'm going to go to this video right here on Reddit. It's the absolute state of OCE from user AA Recessive. I'm going to post a link to this video and Ryan 6 Days a Week video in the description. But yeah, this video is insane. So it's a 4-minute long video. I'm going to try to speed it up. So let's see if I could put it on. There we go. So in this video, this guy's getting teamed in another issue, but I'm going to go over that in another video. But look, this guy, so it's a fighter versus a rogue. 2 throwing daggers on the rogue. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So he threw at least 9 to 10 throwing daggers. That rogue did. Never engaged in melee. The only time Recessive engages in melee is when the rogue starts running. So there's another rogue throwing dagger. 2. Hand crossbow. And then Recessive switches to throwing axes. Instead of going in melee, he goes to throwing axes or using his crossbow.
What? You're smoking oil.
The Bard's using oil.
Smoking oil, bro.
Or the Ranger, I don't know, I'm not sure what it is.
Hey, Bilson.
Bro, I haven't fucking
Another melee
shade.
class.
Are you interested in Ruby Silver?
Yep.
More oil, more throwables. Range, so that's a Ranger.
Bro, Recessive's literally getting teamed up on now in the Goblin Caves, like bad. There's a fucking Ranger on him, like a rogue and
Really?
shit. Like
A Ranger, a Rogue, and a Barbarian.
Right
2 Rogues and a Barbarian.
Itagami, what do you need?
I need 5 Ruby Silver.
So, all but one of these classes is a melee class. Recessive has only taken 2 melee swings. None of the Rogues have went into melee at all. The Barbarian hasn't taken a single swing. He's just been throwing axes and covering in the corner. Yeah, it's just, this is the state of the game right now. And I love this game, but there's issues like this that make the game, I mean, teaming is one thing, but the ranged meta is really kind of breaking the balance of the game, right? And then especially when you add in Wizards and Warlocks, I know everybody's getting nerfs. I don't really want to talk about balancing issues. I think Iron Mace needs to be done with balancing issues for like classes specifically. I think what needs to be focused on is core gameplay mechanics. And what I mean by that is things like removing slow from range, so not everybody can use it. Maybe adding a limit to how many throwables players can bring into the dungeon, or maybe even adding a throwables equipment slot and giving the reload of throwables a animation. So like you have to actually equip the throwables, and there's a equipment animation going on, because the ability to hot swap and dump 5 to 10 stacks of throwables is a leading cause of this ranged meta. And then you have obviously crossbows and longbows being a huge problem.
Literally three people on him, right? Oh my god, this is fucking ridiculous.
Look at them all getting up.
Like 5 ruby silver ingots.
Look at
You just
them.
got a utility on.
So how many we've seen?
Look
You
at
just got a
them.
utility on.
We've seen him throw already over 10 throwing axes, and he still has 3 stacks of throwing axes and his crossbow. So that means he had what, like 8 stacks of throwing axes?
Getting up.
Like 5 ruby silver ingots.
Look
You
at
just got a
them.
utility on. You just
Four.
have the utility on recessive. You just throw all your utility at him.
400 for 4, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
Come to utility. What's your name?
Maddie Photo.
I need one more. Wilson, can I buy 1 ingot?
I mean, he's playing really good. And recessive, I understand in this situation.
I don't know.
Oh shit, wait. Oh, there we go.
I'll be able
Try
to
to kill
buy
them.
one on the mist.
But
I can
the
only
fact
give
that
that
this is
much. I
even
don't have that much
happening
gold
is
on
ridiculous.
Look, I just found really good fucking bisque boots for me that I'm actually.
Yeah, that's fine. Buy it then. Buy it.
That's actually mad. There we go.
Do you have any left or no?
That's actually insane.
Wait, hunting traps just go off on their ass.
Also, pro tip: hunting traps. If you're a fighter and you have a shield and you're in a hunting trap, one of your best things to do is just sit there and block and pop a healing pot. Sit there and block, because healing traps eventually just break,
Yeah, fair enough.
especially if you're getting pressed.
Bilson, do you have any left?
Negative. Just buy it off fucking.
I know, but it's like a lot of people don't sell it. Oh, wait, can you trade me?
Yes, they do.
First one, stuff for me,
They're
Bilson.
all low. They're all low as fuck, bro.
This is disgusting.
Bilson,
So now they
Okay,
finally
hurry
go
up.
into melee because they're all out of utility.
Buy it, yeah.
Go. It's gonna be gone.
Recessive
Oh wait,
is
shit!
out of
No,
bolts.
wait, never mind. I need to buy another one more. Oh my god, my characters are all broke.
Fuck me, you gave
Sprint
me
up. You got
half.
sprint up.
You gave me half of it.
I'll buy you one.
Yeah. I'm looking right now for one.
Missed trade.
Close the door.
Ruby.
Bruh.
Dude,
He
what
almost gets
is
him.
there?
You
What did I
nearly
just
got
want?
that, bro.
He almost gets him. But that video proves my point. So that's the state of the game right now. I love the game. It's still a lot of fun. I still enjoy playing it, but I'm going to be real. That is not fun for me to do. Sitting there and stacking up on utility and playing range, no matter what class I am, is not. I don't think how the game was intended to be developed. I don't think it was intended to be designed this way. It's just not a really healthy state of play, in my opinion. Something has to be done about ranged damage and the capability of ranged weapons as a whole, from throwing weapons all the way to longbows and crossbows. In my opinion, the slow needs to just be deleted, or they need to make it so you have to aim for the slow. Maybe if you hit them in the legs, it slows, but it does far, 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 far less damage. So maybe like you only do 25% of the damage if you hit them in the legs, but it slows them down by like a flat percentage, right? Like maybe like 10%. And then that way Rangers slow on their ability actually makes sense, right? But should every ranged weapon in the game have a slow on it? Not at all. Franciscas, I think, have a 20% slow. Throwing daggers have like a 10 or 15% slow. I think longbow has like a 10 or 15% slow. Like, it's not an insignificant amount. It's a pretty decent amount of slow. And it goes up to like 20 to 25%, right? So that's just a fifth of your movement speed gone from range. That's better than hitting somebody with a longsword. So it just doesn't make any sense. It makes melee almost obsolete, unless you're closing or you just run out of utility, as we saw there. So we're seeing a lot of teams play almost exactly how Recessa was playing, just 3 people. Imagine 3 people with, stacks of 5 to 10 throwables. I was on Ruins the other day soloing, just trying to farm up, and I ran into 2 rogues. I was where the Wraith was, the Wraith or the cockatrice, with that little cheese spot, the like little shed with the hay in it by the healing shrine and the worm room, over there. And I was up on top, and I was on my ranger, and I had trapped both sides of it because I heard them coming. I heard 2 players coming, and I trapped both sides of it, and I was waiting for them to come to me and engage in melee so I could then jump off and shoot them to death, right? I was playing sneaky. I was 1v2. But instead, what they did, which is smart, but they stayed on the ground, and they proceeded to get burned through. I think I counted 40 total throwing daggers, which is just hilarious. I mean, it was hilarious at the time because I made these people burn through more money in throwing daggers than the gear I had was worth. I was in a starter kit, and I had only found whatever was on the Wraith and maybe some skeletons, right? So it was a huge L for them, which is funny. But at the end of the day, they don't really care, because if you have like 10 grand in your bank account, what's spending $200 a run on throwing daggers? It's, it's one of the reasons why people complaining about the cost of high roller it only makes sense. The cost of high roller and the cost of throwing daggers, it only punishes the lowest skill player, because the people that don't have like 5 to 10 grand in their stash, they're the ones who aren't going to be able to buy 10 throwing axes, right? They're not going to be able to buy 20 throwing axes or 20 throwing daggers. They're the ones who can't afford to go in high roller. You're punishing the casual player and giving them a worse gameplay experience. There's so many stacking elements of barriers, right? So if you're a barbarian and you're rocking base kit, or even some like whites and greens, and you're starting to build up your kit, and you run into another barbarian, even if he's in whites and greens, but he has 10 throwing axes in his inventory, he's probably going to win because he never has to engage you in melee. And if he hits you with one with an Achilles strike, you're basically dead, right? Unless you're way better than him and he charges you and just makes a huge mistake. It just doesn't make sense. It adds another barrier to fun to the gameplay of Dark and Darker, and something really, really, really has to be done about all of these barriers and kind of wonky developmental choices, because all it's doing is punishing people for it's giving the players who are successful an even bigger advantage over the players who are unsuccessful and new players. Right? Because a new player, no matter what, isn't going to have 10 throwing axes. A new player, no matter what, isn't going to have a crossbow. A new player, they don't start with a crossbow, right? Or they don't start with a longbow. They start with a recurve. So having these things be basically force multipliers for being successful, it just ends up being a case where it's an insurmountable challenge for newer players or less skilled players or less players who don't have as much time to compete, even against players who might not be as good as them but have more time or resources, because obviously RMT is a thing, and this type of game mechanic feeds into RMT, because what ends up happening is, say a casual player is like, okay, well, everybody's rocking 10, everybody's rocking BIS, and 10 throwing axes in their kit or 10 throwing daggers and crossbows, I don't have enough time to farm up that money. I'll just RMT. And that's their way to compete, right? It's not a healthy state of the game. So when you have all of these barriers for casual players or people who don't have as much time, all it does is funnel into it, like kind of forces people to RMT more because they don't have as much time. The only way they can actually compete is by being better at skill. Even if they're better in skill, there's a certain threshold where playing more than X amount of hours is going to always be more beneficial than however much skill somebody has. So just because you have the money to spend and you can cheese the game through having an inventory filled with throwing weapons and crossbow bolts, right? So yeah, this is just a huge issue that I wanted to highlight. I still love the game. I think that the game's going in a great direction. But this range meta needs to go. It really does. It's breaking the game, right? And it's making it more difficult for casual players to enjoy the game. But this is almost a 30-minute long video. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you guys have any suggestions on how to fix this range meta, please leave them in comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Love you guys. Peace.